Hi, welcome to Ketobiography, formerly known as Less of Me Success Stories. I am one of your hosts, Robin Dobbins. At Ketobiography, Natalie Champ and I share inspiring stories of healing. We illuminate personal journeys that demonstrate the life-changing power of the ketogenic lifestyle, empowering our listeners with wisdom while building a thriving community. Hi, Natalie. Tell us about our guest today.
Hi, Robin. Today I am delighted to introduce our friend, Kelly McLean, who has undergone an incredible health transformation over the past 2 years. After struggling with her weight for years, she opted for gastric sleeve by bariatric surgery. Initially, this led to success, but ultimately resulted in weight regain. Determined to take control of her health, she discovered NSNG, no sugar, no grains lifestyle. Everything changed from there. By eliminating processed foods, sugar, grains, she not only lost weight, but improved her overall health, ditched medications, and regained her energy and zest for life. Today, she is here to share her inspiring stories, the lessons she has learned, and now embracing a low-carb lifestyle has completely reshaped her future. Welcome to Ketobiography, Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
We're so happy that you're here. You're special to us. You're a friend of ours. And so we are excited to host you today. And this is where we turn it over to you and let you tell your story and where you are today.
Okay. My story is probably not different than millions of other people. I grew up in the 70s. I'm 62 years old today. I grew up in the 70s and 60s and 70s. And my mother was a very good cook. And she was Southern, so it was all the really good comfort foods that we ate at home. Unfortunately, that was the time that the food industry had started pushing synthetic oils over natural oils. So I remember my mother cooking with Crisco. Now, she did keep a jar of bacon fat, bacon grease on the stove, which she used also, but it was Crisco and vegetable oil and all of that. So I did, it was also the time of convenience foods. Loved having TV dinners. Chicken pot pies, my absolute favorite. Frozen Swanson chicken, just, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, that we know now is the basis for the problems that we in this generation are having, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and autoimmune inflammation syndrome, everything that's happening. But it was good. It was good at the time. And unfortunately, I'm at that stage where so many other people are, that we are now understanding what has happened to us and why. And I am fortunate enough to have learned the hard way, but I learned what I needed to do. Fast forward, I had a typical childhood. I was very thin all through high school. And then I got married in 1983. And of course I started putting on a little weight after getting married, and then when I had my first child in 1990, I gained quite a bit of weight because I had that mentality that, oh, I can eat anything I want because I'm pregnant. And nobody told me that how hard it would be, afterwards to lose that weight or to, that it was bad for the baby. And nobody told me any of that stuff. So I was happy to eat a lot of foods that I probably shouldn't be eating. So I had my first child, didn't lose the weight after. I think I gained like 60 pounds. Did not lose that after the pregnancy. Had my second child in 93. Tried harder not to lose weight or not to gain weight during that pregnancy. I think I only gained 25. However, I was told that I had gestational diabetes. So I tried to do better, which I think I did. Still, after that pregnancy, did not really lose that weight either. So I was quite heavy during my kids' childhoods and up until their early adulthood, which I regret a lot. It's hard to have a parent, who is overweight, but I did my best for them. Then I decided in 2014 to try and do something. I was on high blood pressure medication. My knees were, not doing very well. I had a lot of knee pain. So I decided that I needed, after, of course, doing all the things. I did Weight Watchers. I did this diet and that diet. I tried to do aerobics. And nothing stuck. I would lose a little bit of weight eating low fat, and then I would gain it back and, most likely gained more back than I lost. In 2014, I had reached a weight of 276, and I'm 5'8". So I decided to go ahead. A coworker of mine had the sleeve gastrectomy surgery and was doing quite well. So I thought I would do that. I would do that too. I did. It went well. I lost 110 pounds initially over the first year. And I kept that off for, 3 or 4 years, maybe. Maybe a little more. And then I kind of got out of the proper eating again. I can have a little bit of this. I can have a little bit of that. I can still not eat a whole lot, because the stomach is much smaller after that surgery. It does stretch, but it still kind of restricts the amount that you can have at one time. But grazing is still easy to do. So I ended up gaining 50 pounds back. And once that happened, and I thought, well, this is not good. I went through an awful lot to get to where I was. I don't want to go back to the way I was before the surgery. And I have family members who also have weight issues and type 2 diabetes. And there's some dementia and Alzheimer's in my family, not a lot of cancers, but I wanted to see if I could do this and be a good role model, maybe help my family members on their own health journeys. So I started, kind of searching, and I happened to listen to a podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, Mike Rowe, The Way I Heard It, I think it was called. And he had a guest by the name of Vinnie Tortorich. Now, the first time I heard Vinnie on his on Mike's show was maybe a few years before, and he talked about his journey to better health. He developed a lifestyle that he refers to as NSNG, which stands for no sugar, no grains. And it seemed to really resonate with me. I thought, well, this, I think I could do something like that. But I never really got into it the first time. After a couple of years, I heard him back on the show for a second time. And I said, all right, well, I think I can do this. I bought Vinnie's book and I read it, and I said, yeah, I really, really think I can do this. I really want to try. So I did. May 15th, 2023 was my first day, and I was 214 at that time, and I took all my measurements and all of that. And today I've lost over 60 pounds. I'm down to 160, and I have no more medications, no blood pressure medication. I do still take thyroid medication. I'm hoping that someday I can get off of that as well, but I'm not sure. I have eczema, which has quieted down quite a bit. If I have a little flare up, I put a little beef tallow on it and it clears it right up. But other things that I've done too, in that vein is I've tried to eliminate chemicals, and I've tried to eliminate, extra ingredients in my food. And it's all about, not just losing weight, but becoming healthy. And that was my main motivation. I know we always like to say that that's a benefit, right? Health is the goal. Weight loss is the benefit. So, and I try to pass that on to people, to try to get them to understand, and I think that it's helping now that it's becoming mainstream. Seed oils is a lot. You can see a lot about seed oils in the news and about ingredients in the food, and the government is trying to get rid of certain ingredients and food dyes and things like that. And that's all a great start. We have a long way to go, but I have learned, I have devoured books, podcasts, videos, watching, documentary videos on YouTube and other places about learning how to eat properly and what our ancestral diets used to be, and why we wouldn't be here if our ancestors had not eaten certain foods that they had, and how it changed after the second agricultural revolution, when grains and sugar became just a complete staple in the American diet, and how that has really caused a lot of problems for the human race, basically, and animals too, because when you feed an animal grains, they gain a lot of weight. That's how they fatten up cows and fatten up pigs, and same thing with humans. And so it's a learning process, and I'm still learning all the time. But I'm very happy to be able to share what I've learned with people if they want to know. And I feel great, and hopefully won't have any issues in the future to be able to continue what I'm doing. And that's about it. That's where I'm at.
Short, sweet, to the point. That's fantastic. So I have follow-up questions though, because you made me think. So, you said that you were eating properly after you had your surgery, but that went away. What was eating properly? What did they tell you? How were you supposed to eat?
That's a really good question, because what I've decided, or I'm sorry, what I've discovered is that it was eating properly for a bariatric diet is keto. And keto is low carb and low sugar, but it still contains grains and sweeteners. And in that you can keep eating these things. And what we have learned is that those things are, no matter what form they're in, sugar is sugar is sugar. And a sweetener is a chemical. And I would know, I wouldn't just take a chemical and put it in my food if I didn't know what the cause was going to be on my body. And so you know, the food industry has decided that, okay, we're going to take the sugar out, but we're going to add these chemical sweeteners, because once we take the sugar out, it won't taste good to people. So we still need to make it sweet, or if we take the fat out, we need to replace it with something. So they add a chemical sweetener. And the same thing with bread. I mean, you know, if anybody goes to the hospital for anything and stays overnight, and they bring you food, they're going to bring you foods that, even if it's a low carb diet or a low, you know, they might bring you a low fat diet, and it's going to have breads and it's going to have sugars or sweeteners. And yes, you can lose weight, but it's not sustainable, because your body is still going to want those things. I can't break my sugar addiction if I'm eating sweet foods, whether it's sweetened by a chemical sweetener or honey or agave or any of the other natural sugars that people try to use, because they think it's better. And where it might be better, it's still sugar, and it still affects your body the same way. So yes, I was able to lose weight, and I was eating the things that were on my bariatric diet, but it didn't cure my addiction. And so eventually, as so many people do, I sought out what I was addicted to, which is junk food, because of the sugar and the bad fats that they add to the sugar, to make food taste good or appealing.
And Kelly, for those that don't maybe know for sure, what is the difference between a bariatric sleeve or gastric bypass? Can you explain? And why did you choose the sleeve over the bypass, if that was even an option?
So, well, first of all, a coworker of mine had the sleeve, and he was doing very well. So I thought, well, that's probably a good option for me. But the difference is that a sleeve, basically, it removes about 80% of the stomach, and it leaves kind of like a banana shaped stomach. So it cuts the amount that you can eat by quite a bit. And they call it a sleeve because it just, I guess, it looks like a sleeve. There's no like actual sleeve over the stomach or anything like that. A bypass is where they remove the connection between the stomach and the lower intestine, and they bring it up and attach it to where the large intestine attaches to the stomach. So they bypass the stomach altogether. And so when you eat, the food goes directly into the colon, into the digestive system. And I think the reason that I chose that was it seemed a little less drastic. I didn't want to, bypassing my stomach altogether just I didn't find that appealing. And I also think that I had heard that there's a lot more after surgery issues with a bypass. It's like the most dramatic, like last resort. You know, a lot of people that have a sleeve end up going back after regaining a lot of their weight and having a resurgical where they do the bypass, because the first one didn't work. And I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to start with the most dramatic, you know, drastic option.
And now that you have found this lifestyle, do you have any regrets?
No, I don't. Obviously, I wish I had never gotten to the point that I needed to, or that I thought I needed to take such a drastic measure. but I feel like it's part of my journey. I understand things a lot better about how the body works and about why the addiction is so hard to overcome. It has helped me. It also, because my stomach was drastically reduced, I still have a very small amount of food at a time that I can consume. The only thing though with that is that I think I get hungry again sooner than maybe other people might, because the first time I eat, I can't eat as much. And then, after a little while, even when I eat, steak and I'm completely stuffed, I might get hungry a little bit, or I might think, well, I could probably finish that now, after 45 minutes or an hour. So that makes it a little bit harder for me to maybe not graze a little bit or go back and eat something. But I seem to be handling that, and I haven't gone back and gained any weight. So I think that's okay. But no, I don't regret it. I feel like it's part of my overall learning journey, and to help me understand what I can do, what I can't do, and why.
That's actually a conversation that I've had with more than one person, because I know quite a few people that have had one of the gastric surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And when they switch over, when they realize, okay, I'm gaining weight and I need to actually change how I eat and make this a food decision and not a surgical decision, that's the biggest struggle. Is we're out there teaching you should fast, you should only eat within a 6-hour window, you should only eat 1 or 2 meals a day, all this stuff. And that is like completely removing an entire population of people from success. Because in your case, you do need to eat small meals. You're not going to get full if you don't eat more meals in a day.
Right.
You're not going to get enough nourishment if you don't eat more meals in a day. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I do think that so many people in that situation are just trying to do it the right way. And the right way is what the people with all their working internal parts are doing. And you can't compare the two. They're just simply not the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what I also wanted to stress this point is that whether or not you've had surgery, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a different right way. What works for me is not going to work for you, or may not work for you, may not work for a lot of other people. And we all have to find our way of doing it for ourselves. I didn't have other health issues. I didn't have any blood sugar issues or anything like that, which I'm very grateful for. But I could have, if I had kept eating the way I was eating, and I didn't want that. So everybody has to find their way. And that's where, reading or just listening to audiobooks. I'm not a big reader, actual books, but I can listen to a book. I can listen to a podcast while I'm doing so many other things, and I can absorb it. I can go back and re-listen, and it really, really helps. And it really is really enlightening when you find, when something clicks in your head, that like, oh, wow, this is what I've been doing all this time, and this is what's happening and why. And I can now do something about it, and that's a really good, empowering feeling, when you can take over your own healthcare and well-being and know that you're doing it for yourself and for your family and for your friends, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Kelly, I'm jumping in all over the place, and I'm just telling Natalie she's going to have to wait because no, I know she has a list of questions also, but you're just triggering things in my head. So that's a really good thing. Before we move on to what you just said, because I want to ask you more about that, and potentially so does Natalie. But I do want to, before we move off of your surgery, ask if you had any the ailments, or did you have any side effects from that? Do you still have any like long-term issues that have happened from that? Or yeah, because I do know a lot of people, again, I that even after they start eating right, the surgery itself has caused scarring, or just sometimes your stomach locks up and won't digest and that kind of stuff. Have you had any of those problems?
No, I haven't had, thank goodness, anything that drastic. I have to wait for a good amount of time. You cannot drink liquid while you're eating. That is one thing that they tell you, because of the way that the food leaves the stomach. It happens faster if there is liquid in the stomach. So when you're drinking, it opens up it opens the stomach up, and the food will pass through into the digestive system faster. So they tell you not to for at least an hour after you eat, to keep the food in your stomach, to make you feel full. And I know that if I do drink something too quickly, I will get stomach cramps. And so that's not good. It hurts. So I try not to do that. The other thing is, sometimes if I lay on my left side, or I'm sorry, my right side, at night, I can feel a little something. Maybe there's a little scarring, and it'll make me have to move, change my position. But other than that, I really don't have any side effects, detrimental side effects from the surgery itself.
I find it interesting, pardon me, that all of these you've mentioned, I can only do this, I can't drink this, so I can feel like I'm full longer. But there's no mention of so that I can get nutrients in my body more efficiently, right? And I don't know, it's a little mind-boggling to me that the doctors aren't seeing that. I'll just keep them full for a minute. They'll be fine. They'll be happy. We don't necessarily care what they put in the stomach as long as it's small and they can digest it, right?
Yeah, that is one thing that I can say about at least the doctor that I had, and all the medical professionals that I dealt with, is it was not talked about. It was strictly about losing weight. And I understand that's the whole main issue, right? Why people go through this surgery is because they're overweight and they want to lose weight. But there's not much discussion about nutrients and vitamins and minerals and why you need to have these things. I can only assume that they think that once you lose weight, you're going to get healthier automatically, and you're going to absorb the nutrients, and you're going to get the minerals. I can't remember if they required me to take supplements. They may have, and I can't tell you that. It was over 10 years ago, so I don't recall. I don't think so, because I take supplements now, and I take a lot of them, not because I think that I'm deficient, but it's just, I know there are certain things that a person needs to have that they may not get through foods. I know I get plenty of B12, so I don't take that. But and I also know that the supplements that I take are good and clean, and they are not going to cause me any harm. So I'm happy to, you know, just make sure that I have everything that I need. But I don't recall a lot of discussion. It was just really weight that everyone was focused on. And like I said, I get that, but there is so much more to it. And I feel like they do their patients a great deal of harm or detriment by not having more nutrition discussions. And if they did, you know, it was talked about once and it wasn't talked about again. But it's the knowledge that I have gained since then that really helps me understand why it is I started gaining weight again, and what it was that I needed to do to stop that and to keep that from happening in the future.
I find it interesting that they didn't give you a little bit of, I don't know, forewarning, if you will. You know, you may need this supplement for the rest of your life because of, you know, maybe you're not going to get this nutrients through, you know, just something like, you know, maybe it's good for you to take extra fish oil, or I just made that up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whatever it is that I find it interesting that they just send you on your way and, you know, good luck.
Well, and again, I can only speak to the people that I worked with, and I can't say that they, you know, other places don't do it. But since we still have such an epidemic of obesity in this country, and since there have been millions of people that have had the surgery, and I'm going to, you know, assume that a great deal of them were not successful for the reasons that, you know, that I've talked about. You know, the other thing is they don't tell you why you gained the weight in the first place. Because if you don't know why you gained it in the first place, how do you know what to change? Because they tell you, oh, it's you eat too much, too many calories, too much junk food. And while that's all true, why are you eating it? Why are you eating so much junk food? Why are you doing it? I mean, I can tell you such embarrassing stories now that, you know, I used to, you know, put my kids to bed, and then I was so excited because I have a brand new bag of baked Lay's potato chips that was going to be all mine after the kids went to bed. And I would sit and I would watch the TV and I would just devour this bag of chips. And I was so happy. And
obviously because they're baked, they're good for you.
They're good for you. Exactly. They're
Mhm.
they're not fried, and, you know, they're baked. So and that's where, you know, that's where we don't want to get into that conversation because we'll be here all day. But I mean, just stuff like that. And so it was you know, it's no wonder that people who go through this and put themselves through it and have the best of intentions and are hoping to save their own lives, and ultimately until they find a way to move past just the surgery, like I have done and other people that I know have done, it's just not going to work. They have to, there's so much more to it that we are not being taught, and we are not being told. In fact, we're being taught the complete opposite. And that's really difficult to get people to understand too. I know you know what I'm talking about, but it's so hard to get people to understand that all of this advice, and you put it in the internet and it's all going to come back. It's all going to be wrong. It's just wrong. And I'm glad that I've discovered it, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating when I see family and friends and just everybody not understanding why.
It goes back to how we started this conversation, right? If you, back in the 70s, maybe even 80s, I mean, I remember those days as well, that did you ever hear of anybody having a gastric sleeve or gastric bypass? I personally don't. And now it kind of seems like I can probably count on my, 10 fingers how many people I either know or know of,
Right.
some in my family. And I have continuous conversations about what you're putting in your body. You made this drastic, decision to have your stomach removed. Why are we not making a drastic decision to figure out what's going to nourish me now?
Yeah.
But for some reason, that just is not important. It hasn't been hammered in enough, right?
Right.
And so with that, excuse me, from the day that you started NSNG to now, has your diet, meaning when I say diet, I mean the foods that you eat, lifestyle, if you will, how has that changed from the day that you started to maybe now, like your eating habits? Have you done anything different?
Oh, yes. I mean, it has evolved quite a bit, actually. I was NSNG, fully NSNG, from the very beginning. But now I would say that I am more carnivore than I am NSNG even. I mean, NSNG is carnivore, but carnivore is not NSNG, right? I don't eat a lot of vegetables. When I first started, I lots of broccoli, lots of green beans, making things with sauces that, contain all, the good things, but are not necessarily carnivore. So yeah, I discovered that it's a lot of work. You have to cook a lot, which means there's all that goes in with cooking, right? There's the cleaning and the preparation and the cleaning up afterwards and the storage of the foods and everything. But I've gotten, pretty good at that. And actually, as I have gone less NSNG, but more carnivore, that has gotten easier as well. There's not a lot of planning, other than make sure I take things out of the freezer so that I have something to eat. But if I'm going to make something with ground beef, or I'm going to make something I'm just going to grill a steak, or I'm going to bake some chicken. I mean, it's super easy. It still takes time. It still takes preparation, but it's so much easier than gathering all the ingredients and things. So that's changed a lot. I started off doing that, and I think I've told you before that I'm basically a pretty lazy person. So having to gather all the ingredients and all of that stuff, and I'll just have a steak, or I'll just make some hamburger patties. That's a lot easier. And you know what? I prefer that. I prefer that anyway. So it's easy for me. But it's been almost 2 years, and I would say that that's probably the biggest change, is that I've gone from full NSNG to I would say 80-20, maybe even 85-15 carnivore. And I just enjoy eating, the simple things. I could eat a steak every single day. I have eggs and bacon pretty much for breakfast every day. So, and I'm very happy having that. So yeah, it's changed that much. Also, I gave up soda when I had the surgery because carbonated beverages are not allowed after you have surgery because of the carbonation. It can affect the what's left of your stomach, and so I gave up soda a long time ago. So that was an easy transition for me, not having to have soda. So I don't have that, and I just drink water or unsweetened tea. And at the moment, I'm thinking about transitioning from, because I just drink pretty much black tea all the time, to green tea, to lessen the oxalates, because I drink a lot of tea and there's a lot of oxalates in there. And, I want to try to do as much as I can. So I'm going to transition over to green tea, I think, and then see where that goes from.
Look, you're a Southern girl, and it's just the fact that you're drinking unsweet tea instead of sweet tea is huge. So, you can baby steps into green tea, I think. But I agree with you. I think you're right. I think people end up really evolving over time on how they eat. This is going to work. A low carb, cutting out the refined foods is going to work for a lot of people for a really long time. But as your goals change, a lot of times you have to refine it. And then exactly like you said, it's just easier. I'm going to thaw out some meat. I'm going to cook the meat. I'm going to eat the meat. Done.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so simple. Our brains overcomplicate it. And I have a pet peeve. And it's this like levels of carnivore conversation that people are having. And I just can't, low carb, cutting out the processed food is going to give results, just like beef and water only carnivore is going to give results. But if we're pointing fingers at you're only 85% carnivore, then that defeats the purpose of the community. In my mind, we could all be very supportive of each other and be a powerhouse of change in how our society views food and nourishment. But instead, we're nitpicking each other because you ate an avocado yesterday, and so you're wrong. And it's just the silliest business. It's a pet peeve of mine, and I just needed to get it out there because I did.
And see, that goes back to what I said before. What works for me is not going to work for everybody. I would be just as happy not eating things, but my husband still wants to have vegetables, and so I'll cook him vegetables, and I'll make like a ground beef casserole or something, or chicken casserole, and I'll put some green beans or some broccoli and make it a good carnivore cheese sauce to put on it. And that's fine, but if it were just me, I wouldn't do it. I don't need it. Every once in a while, like the other day, I made I needed to use some leftover, or I needed to use some ground beef, and I needed to use some other ingredients. So I made sloppy joes with, no sugar and nothing in it. They were really good, but I didn't want to eat it just on its own. So I made some riced cauliflower and kind of mixed it up, and it was really good, so in that, in that aspect, I will use something else as, like most people use rice as a filler, right? Or just to add something else. But I'm also perfectly happy just having the ground beef by itself, put some salt on it and I'm good.
Well, I'm not going to put the dunce cap on you because you decided to put some rice cauliflower in
right.
your
Well,
meat. Yeah.
And that's what I mean. And if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But
But you're so good. I'm so glad you're here because this interview is going really well. You keep leading right into the question that I want to ask next. And so you were talking about your husband, and then earlier you said you want it to be an example for your family. So I was wondering if anybody has seen what you've done and taken your lead. This could be a touchy subject because I think all of us are in a position where we try to show people a different way and there's a lot of pushback against it. So I was wondering if you've had those types of issues or if you've had some victories in that process.
I've had somewhat of a good outcome with my husband and my son. My husband has type 2 diabetes and he's on blood pressure medication. I was a terrible role model or example or partner for many years, not helping him control that because I had my own issues, which again, if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of somebody else? And I wasn't taking care of myself. And really, this was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do something was I wanted to get him off medication, and he was on statins as well. So when I started, and the first thing I did was when I realized about what statins do to people and why they're prescribed and why they don't need to be prescribed. I did convince him to stop taking the statins. He didn't want to do it cold turkey. He talked to his doctor. He finished his prescription, but once that was done, he didn't refill it. And I think he understands now why. I'm having a very much more difficult time getting him to break his sugar addiction. He will not give up Diet Canada Dry. That's what he drinks. And he will not give up adding sweeteners to his food. And he'll still eat things that he shouldn't eat. He has lost some weight, but his blood sugar is still not good. It went down a little bit, but he just gets in that cycle where he just cannot stay low carb. And he tells me, I just can't eat meat all day. And I tell him, you don't have to eat meat all day, but he just, so it's difficult for me because, I'm really trying, and he sees my success and he's very happy for me. But he is encouraging and he does support me, but he hasn't gotten to the point yet. And I do believe that you have to get to that point on your own. Nobody's going to make you do this. And that goes back to when I said I heard Vinnie the first time. I just never got to that point until I heard him the second time. And then something clicked. And until that happens, all I can do is try to encourage him and be the best role model that I can be. The same goes for my son. He's like almost 6'3", and he has put on quite a bit of weight. But he is asking me questions, and he's seeing what the kind of things that I put out on the internet. And he's changed, the last time I saw him, he lives in Texas. The last time I saw him, I got him to change his butter from, I can't believe it's not butter, to Kerrygold. I know, right? So little things. It's hard when they don't live close. But he and his wife, they love those coffee drinks. It's got, it's half milk and half, sugar. And it's just, it just makes me want to jump out of my skin every time I see him drink it. But, baby steps, it's just gotta be baby steps. That's all I can do.
It's so true, Kelly, because when people watch me and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And then the first thing is, I can't just eat meat. I can't just have that. And I'm like, but you don't have to. But because they see that that's where I'm at, they, put me as only eating meat, and that's the only way I'm succeeding.
Right.
But that it goes back to this gal that I used to fly with as a flight attendant. And I remember her sitting down and telling me, I am only carnivore. This is probably 6 years ago, maybe even longer. And I was all, oh my God, I don't think I would ever go to the bathroom if I ate just meat. How do you do it? But I've always remembered her. And when it was my time to listen, just exactly as you said, I started this and I went, oh, she was right. I remember. And I sent her an email right away. And I was like, you're never going to believe how I'm eating. And we've kept in contact about it. And it's just, I almost feel like for some, it's an excuse. Like, well, I can't just eat meat. So, and then, so I totally get what you're saying. And it's like, but that's not where I started. Do you remember when I started? Can we talk about that? And so it is just so hard to not want to yell and tell everybody about it, right?
Yeah, it is. And when you do meet somebody, I was at a birthday celebration once at a restaurant, and I was sitting across from a woman that I didn't know. And I ordered prime rib and no sides and no, this or that. And she looked at me, she says, are you carnivore? And I was so excited. Yeah. And she's, oh yeah, me too. And blah, blah, blah. And oh my gosh. And it's very hard to control, I just want to say all the things and just, talk to her for the rest of the day and forget everything else. And it's really hard to do that. And my husband's always telling me, take it easy. Don't tell her don't tell these people that everything they're eating is poison, even though it is, don't use that word. And so, it's hard to control.
It's so hard. We know this truth and we just want to scream it to everyone and nobody's ready to receive it. And that's the struggle, is knowing that fine line between feeling the freedom to say these things and then also understanding where the other people are with that information. But yes, I agree. We should be screaming it from everywhere.
Yeah.
That's why we do this.
And trying to get them to believe that you're not insane, that you're not a crazy person. I'm not a crazy person. Let me tell you why. But
I don't want to keep you, but I would like to ask you, I know only because I know you. Oh, I know you. So cute. You've had some big changes in the last, 6 months in your life. Do you want to kind of real quickly go over that? And with those changes, have you struggled to make changes with your eating habits?
So 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I had a right hip replacement. And then 4 months ago, I had a right knee replacement. So the hip was prior to my lifestyle change. Luckily, of the two surgeries, that one is the least, it's the easier surgery to recover from. So I did recover from that very well. Once I started, that was in, let's see, when did I have that? That was in January. Then in May is when I started eating better and really paying attention to what I put in my body to reduce inflammation. And that is, gosh, especially when you're going to have surgery, so important, because, that with that first incision, your body is just on alert. and is going to try and recover, you know, this damage that is being done. And so, even though it's a big surgery, it is much, much easier to recover from than a knee surgery. I had that 4 months ago. I didn't have knee surgery prior to that, so I cannot compare it to anything other than I think that I recovered very well from it. And I attribute that to the fact that for a year and a half before, I had been lowering the inflammation in my body and eating well, and I have the good nutrients that I need in order for my body to be able to recover well. And the changes that I made, I guess, after the surgery, the second time, the knee surgery, was that I prepared beforehand. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to, you know, cook my own meals and, you know, get food for myself, at least for a week or so. I didn't really know how long. So I made a bunch of steak, and I cut them all up into bites. And I put that in, you know, put that in the refrigerator, and my husband would bring me, you know, steak bites every, you know, time I was hungry. I had yogurt, and I had pecans. I ate a lot of pecans just because it's easy, you know, because you're in bed, right? And you just got to have little things, and you got to have finger food, and, you know, so for the first 2 weeks, I ate very well. I ate steak and pecans most of the time, and drank lots of tea. And so I think that keeping, you know, my meals simple and very high in nutrients, very nutrient dense foods. Oh, and boiled eggs, hard boiled eggs. Ate a lot of hard boiled eggs. That really helped me recover a lot quicker. So yeah, it was good.
That's good. Have you noticed, since there was also a big change that you didn't mention, that you've retired recently?
Oh, yes.
And also, your husband has retired recently. So now, Lord, you guys are home alone together for the first time in a long time, I suspect. Yeah. And has that been difficult at all, or are you just still riding your wave?
I can't say that it's difficult. It's different. You know, that is all mental, you know, you know, trying to realize that I don't have to, I always feel like I'm missing something. Shouldn't I be doing something? Shouldn't I be somewhere? And then finding, you know, trying to make sure that I do have something to do during the day, which I may not have always done before. You know, I can, my house is a little bit cleaner than it used to be. You know, the laundry's all done all the time. The dog's very happy that we're here all the time, which is good because he needs lots of care. He's almost 16. And so, yeah, you know, a really good thing is my husband started, he wanted to get out and get some exercise. So he went over and started playing pickleball yesterday, and he's really liking that. So I may have to go out and try that. I'm a little nervous, you know, the moving of the joints and stuff. I don't want to, you know, hurt myself, but that's also a mental thing. You know, I have to remember that I can do these things now, that I couldn't do before. It's always interesting when, I mean, little things, just putting my shoes on, you know, bending over to put my shoes on. I couldn't do that until I had the hip surgery. And then now with the knee surgery, I can, you know, do other things that I couldn't do before. And until you actually do them, you don't even realize, because I'm so used to not doing something like, oh, I can't do that. Well, wait a minute. Yes, I can. We went out the other day, and as I was getting out of the car, he was dropping me off before he went to park. As I was getting out of the car, I dropped my phone, and it bounced underneath the car. And actually, without even thinking, I was able to get down there and find my phone. And as I got up and I looked at it and it wasn't broken or anything, my husband said, 6 months ago, you couldn't have done that. And I just, I was like, oh, thank you for telling me that, because I didn't even realize it, So until you do something and then realize, oh my gosh, I can do that again. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. Yes, the new joints also are a big part of that, but the weight loss is too. And the strength, I've gained a little bit more strength, flexibility. I probably wouldn't have even attempted to do that. I would have made him get out of the car, come around and fish my phone out, out from under it before that. But I just did it. And yeah. And he said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Oh, what a great feeling. Absolutely. And you're right. So we could just say that there are medical procedures, you talked about you still need your thyroid, you've had some surgeries, that's for damage that you caused, but you knew how to go into these things now with a better understanding of how to keep the inflammation down and how to heal well. And it all adds up to a better overall you.
Yes.
So we're like running out of time. I still had a question. We're just going to skip it. It was so good too. You would have loved it, but whatever. We'll just have to skip it and have to have you back. But I really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, everything I thought, oh, I'm going to ask her, she asked. We have a guest watching. She's asked a couple questions and you answered them in your conversation. So that was pretty awesome. So thank you for all of that. It was I've learned a lot. Before I turn you back over to Natalie, I just want to ask where people can find you and connect with you.
Well, mostly I'm on Facebook. Kelly Rains McLean is my Facebook name. I also have a Facebook page that I just created called KM Nutrition and Wellness. And basically, I just share a lot of what we talk about, from other people's Facebook pages and Instagram, all really good information. I did just start it, so I may add to it later. But right now it's just a lot of really good information, hoping that people will want to know more.
So that was you. Again, you did it again. So I was going to ask you, because you said that learning more is very, very important to you, and you listen to a lot of podcasts and you read or listen to a lot of books and that kind of thing. So that's what I was going to ask you, to give us some resources. So now I'm going to just say, everybody, Kelly's going to put her favorite podcast, and I'm giving you a job. She's going to put her favorite podcast. She's going to put her favorite books on her KM Nutrition and Wellness, which I do already follow. So that since we didn't have time to answer that question here, please go there. It's on Facebook, KM Nutrition and Wellness, and you can find all kinds of resources and things that she has found important in her journey. Again, I want to thank you, and now I'm going to turn you over for Natalie's question.
Thanks, Robin.
I'm a little jealous. I don't know that I follow that, so I'm looking it up right when we're done with this. Okay, Kelly, we ask all of our guests the same question. So we are posing this question to you to help others. What key insight would you want to share that would help others to write their keto biography?
I think that it's what I said before is that you really have to do it for yourself before you can do anything else. You have to find your why. Why, and that could be why anything, if you aren't happy, if you aren't healthy, there's a reason, and until you discover that reason, it's not necessarily going to come from anyone else or anywhere else. You have to find it within yourself, and you have to do it for yourself, because you can't help others. And if you have others that you care about and they care about you, that's so important to realize and understand that, by taking care of yourself, you are taking care of those you love. And so it's not easy, but it's worth it. And there are so many resources now that there isn't a reason why you can't find something to help bring you to that point in your life. There are people and there are places to go and to talk, and people to talk to. And you just have to start. You just have to start.
I think most of us in this space sometimes can feel isolated because we're the only ones in our family that might be, choosing this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And nobody can understand how good it feels because nobody's ever felt this good. So you can't explain that to someone. You can't explain away feelings and energy, right? You just can't explain it to anybody until they're ready to listen, like you said, or they find a why and they realize they haven't been living their life through a why. Yeah. So I totally agree with you. So wrapping it up, I loved this interview, Kelly. Please come back. I've told you before, I'm loving your retirement so far. Really fun to watch. So on behalf of Robin Dobbins, our guest, Kelly McLean, and myself, thank you for hearing our keto biography.